What's up, everybody? Welcome to Close Reading. Today is Monday, June 8th. Today is day one, so we're looking for that main idea of the text Identity by Julia Noboa Polanco. As today is day one and we're looking for main idea, we want to give a main idea shout out to someone last week. Last week we read the text Extreme Hotels, and this person wrote a main idea of extreme hotels that meets the CFS for many reasons. Let's read why. They wrote, about extreme and strange hotels and all the different biomes they're in. There is water, one that's off the side of a cliff, one in the desert, one in the tundra, and one in the forest. They make these so you can appreciate the biomes. And the author made this so you can see what these hotels are about, and maybe you can visit one someday. So thinking about our CFS for main idea, this person's main idea jot had evidence from the text right here in the second bullet. It wasn't necessarily quotes from the text, but they did talk about all the different parts and included everything this text was about. They told us the topic of the text and the deeper meaning, which was the author's point of view. So nice job. Shout out to this person for writing a CFS, a main idea that meets the CFS. And let's see some awesome main ideas this week. So go ahead and take a look at this week's text Identity to try to figure out what genre it is so we can know which of these thinking jobs are going to help us best understand it. Alright, so now that you've taken a look at the text, you probably noticed that yes, it is a poem, because things are organized in stanzas or paragraphs. You don't see traditional sentence structures. It looks a bit different. There aren't necessarily any dialogue or any informational pieces, subheadings, or anything like that. So it's definitely a poem. So keep in mind, what is a literal meaning and what is a deeper meaning as we are reading today. And that brings us to our transferable takeaway. When we read poetry, we need to think about both the literal and deeper meaning. We need to understand what is happening in the poem, but then we need to step back and consider what the poet is trying to say to us, the readers. The poet always has a deeper meaning he or she is trying to convey. So thinking about this transferable takeaway, in terms of a literal meaning, we want to understand what is happening in the poem quite literally. So what do you picture in your head as you are reading it? What is literally happening? And then, by deeper meaning, we mean what the poet is trying to say to us. So if you were to think about maybe a hidden message or what is underlying, or what lesson you can take away from reading this poem, keeping in mind the deeper meaning. So the title of this poem is Identity. Knowing what we know about titles and how they often represent what's going to happen in the poem, let's answer question number one. Based on this title, what do you expect the poem to be about? All right, so let's go and read through this poem, Identity by Julia Noboa Polanco. Let them be as flowers, always watered, fed, guarded, admired, but harnessed to a pot of dirt. I'd rather be a tall, ugly weed, clinging on cliffs like an eagle, wind wavering above high, jagged rocks. To have broken through the surface of stone, to live, to feel, exposed to the madness of the vast, eternal sky, to be swayed by the breezes of an ancient sea, carrying my soul, my seed, beyond the mountains of time or into the abyss of the bizarre. I'd rather be unseen, and if then shunned by everyone, than to be a pleasant-smelling flower, growing in clusters in the fertile valley, where they're praised, handled, and plucked by greedy human hands. I'd rather smell of musty, green stench than of sweet, fragrant lilac. If I could stand alone, strong and free, I'd rather be a tall, ugly weed. All right, so let's take a look at one of our read aloud questions that's going to help us best understand this poem. We're up to number 2 now. What comparison is the poet making in the first 2 stanzas? So let's go back and look at those stanzas. Stanza 1 and stanza 2. Let them be as flowers, always watered, fed, guarded, admired, but harnessed to a pot of dirt. I'd rather be a tall, ugly weed, clinging on cliffs like an eagle, wind wavering above high, jagged rocks. In those first 2 stanzas, what 2 things is the poet comparing to make a point? Go ahead and pause the video to answer that second question. Woo! That brings us to our secret question. What part of your identity are you most proud of? Consider your personality, race, gender, age, family, culture, interests, ethnicity, or anything you feel that makes you you. What is your favorite part of your identity, or what is the piece of your identity that you are the most proud of? Go ahead and answer that secret question in the Google form now, in the Google Doc now. Nice job making it to that secret question. Let's continue with question number 3. What does the poet mean by, if I could stand alone, strong and free, I'd rather be a tall, ugly weed? Let's reread to find out. We left off right here on stanza 3. To have broken through the surface of stone, to live, to feel exposed to the madness of the vast eternal sky, to be swayed by the breezes of an ancient sea, carrying my soul, my seed, beyond the mountains of time or into the abyss of the bazaar. I'd rather be unseen, and if then shunned by everyone, than to be a pleasant-smelling flower, growing in clusters in the fertile valley, where they're praised, handled, and plucked by greedy human hands. I'd rather smell of musty, green stench than of sweet, fragrant lilac. If I could stand alone, strong and free, I'd rather be a tall, ugly weed. So thinking about all the comparisons the author makes between himself and other people, weeds and flowers, what does the poet mean by, if I could stand alone, strong and free, I'd rather be a tall, ugly weed? Go ahead and answer that question now. And that brings us to question number 4. What does the poet want us to understand about identity? We've read through the poem twice together now, but go ahead and take the time now to read through the whole poem yourself, keeping those comparisons between flowers and weeds in mind, and answer this 4th question. What does the poet want us to understand about identity? Alright guys, so we spent a lot of time thinking about the literal and the deeper meaning and how those comparisons helped us understand what the poet wants us to know about identity. Go ahead and answer the main idea right here. You'll notice that this week we have some bullet points in here for you already if you'd like to organize your main idea like that. If not, you can just go ahead and delete them. Any way works for you as long as your main idea meets all components of our CFS. Alright guys, thanks for watching and reading along today. Looking forward to some awesome main ideas.